This is FightFans Radio.
Let's get ready to rumble! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Down goes Frazier! Down goes
Frazier! It's time! You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AtomCombatSports.com and FightFans Radio. It is episode 113 of the Low Blow Radio on SouthwestFight.com, FightFans Radio, and USCombatSports.com. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Jorge Hernandez and Will McClary. What's up, guys? How's it going?
Good evening.
What's going on, man? Just got this debate hangover, son.
I know. I mean, all what people were talking about was the economy and Big Bird. So hopefully we kind of shift that conversation to more relevant things like fighting. So today...
Go ahead. That's right.
So today we're going to talk about the UFC on FX card featuring Jacksons MMA fighter Travis Browne facing Antonio Bigfoot Silva. Their fight goes down tomorrow. They have to weigh in today. We're going to talk about that fight. And we're going to talk about the latest Invicta card this weekend. It's the third edition of that fight series. And we have an interview with one of the participants on that card, Michell Waterson. She's going to talk about her fight. She's going to break down just being a member of the Invicta fight roster and more. Jorge has the interview, and we're going to play that interview later on tonight. Also, we're going to talk about Arturo Gatti. I think he's a favorite of the show. We're going to talk about his Hall of Fame status, and also we're going to talk about the first gay boxer to come out. So we're going to talk about all about that in this edition of the Low Blow podcast. As usual, you can get in contact with the show through Facebook, through facebook.com/LowBlow podcast, also through Twitter, through @TheLowBlow, and through email through lowblow505@gmail.com. And we're available through Stitcher and iTunes. Also, you can get in touch with FightFans Radio through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream. It's all one name, FightFans Radio, that has our show along with the rest of the FightFans Radio network on there. There's great shows. Please check them out. And they're also on Stitcher. So if you have a lot of downtime, your day will go by fairly quick if you listen to all those shows. So, guys, let's get into it with the standing 8 count. And Jorge, before you talk about Joby Sanchez is picking up the win this past weekend. You have some information on the latest Johnny Tapia fight card.
We do. Just yesterday, Johnny Tapia's wife, who's the 5-time world champion here out of the state of New Mexico here in Albuquerque, announced a new endeavor that they're having. They're actually holding local fights off of, basically tying Johnny's name to it. Johnny Tapia Presents is what these fight cards are going to be called. A card is scheduled to take place November 17th at Crown Plaza Hotel. It'll include 3 of the top guys from that gym, probably 3 of the top 10 guys here in the city of Albuquerque when it comes to boxing. Arturo Ray Marquez, who's 13-2, Joaquin Zamora, who's 18-4, and Josh Pibble Torres, one of the local favorites, who's 8-2. They'll also be taking place in that. A total of, I believe, 6 cards will be taking place, and tickets are affordable, man, $20 to $100. And there'll also be a tribute to Johnny Tapia, the late, great Johnny Tapia, that evening as well. So definitely something worth checking out and something worth waiting for here in the next month and a half to come.
Just real quickly, Jorge, that's what I
Sure.
drove through this real quickly. Since that's November 17th, that's the same day as the Carlos Condit fight. Do you know if there's any kind of conflict of, switching the times perhaps? Do you know about picking a specific date? Or did you just go with November 17th, not knowing that the UFC was going on at the same time?
I don't think, when it comes to the boxing and MMA crowds here within Albuquerque, it's pretty divided. There's no hatred or dislike of one another, but it's boxing has its own following. I'm not saying that boxing and MMA fans don't follow one another's sports, but when it comes to boxing, I feel still feels that it's at the forefront in a way. And here, when it comes to local boxing, this appears to be one of the few dates that it would be possible to organize that. But to be honest, I think that the UFC event and Carlos Condit being on it was probably the last thing on its mind. I bet Teresa Tapia probably doesn't even know that Carlos Condit is fighting that night. So when it comes to it, I don't think there was a lot of thought placing into what was actually going on nationally that day. or that night, if any national, I guess, consideration was taken, is if there was a big boxing fight that night. And, as of right now, there actually isn't. So we'll definitely see, how this impacts them. I don't think it'll impact them too much. So it's definitely something that I thought about as well.
No doubt. And he has some. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say that this past Friday night, Joby Sanchez made his XFC debut at XFC 20 there in Knoxville, Tennessee, and he looked very impressive against Chris Dunn. Chris Dunn was able to catch him off balance. They're standing. He did take him down, but just true to his fashion and what he's been practicing on the last 2 years, his jiu-jitsu, he was able to get him in a triangle and force him to tap out at 148. Didn't take much damage, so don't be surprised if you see Joby Sanchez back in there at 4-0 here locally out of Albuquerque, back in the XFC cage. Again, he does have a 5-fight contract, so you can expect to see him there another 4 times on Access TV.
No doubt. Here are the results of UFC on Fuel this past weekend. Stefan Struve got an impressive win over Stipe Miocic by TKO via round 2 at 350. That's really this impressive combination that Struve nailed. And it looks like he wants Verdum, so we'll see what that fight happens. Also, Dan Hardy defeated Amir Sadallah via unanimous decision. Brad Pickett, one of my favorites, defeated Yves Dubuin via knockout in round 1, a huge hometown victory for Brad Pickett. Matt Wyman defeated Paul Sass in an entertaining fight in round 1, 348 via armbar. John Hathaway defeated John McGuire in a pretty much a terrible fight via unanimous decision, 30-27 on all the scorecards. And Che Mills defeated Dwayne Ludwig via TKO via verbal submission. I think Ludwig had a problem with his knee and had to verbally submit. So it wasn't really a clean victory for Che Mills, but nevertheless, Mills got the victory there. There was some ratings news about that event. The replay drew more than the live broadcast of UFC on Fuel. So it's very interesting to compare the ratings between the live broadcast and then the replay. The live broadcast drew 111,000 viewers, while the replay drew 140,000 viewers 6 hours later. So it seems like fans don't really want to watch fights during the afternoon. They'd rather wait till the nighttime and check it out.
Well, yeah, in the words of Jay-Z, I got a reasonable doubt that this rematch will not be interesting to many people. But nevertheless, rematch is going to be against Timothy Bradley and Lamont Peterson. So these guys are, pretty much making the contract for the fight for December 15th. So the most exciting thing here may be if 50 Cent is going to be involved, and the fact that they're going to be fighting at Marlins Park show. So this is, like we mentioned before, this is a huge avenue for two fighters who are not really that notable. They're not really superstars. Bradley coming off the win with Pacquiao. A few more people know him. Lamont Peterson coming back after the steroid use, and it'd be. Hopefully it'll be better than the first fight. I don't see how it could be any worse, but the rematch is happening December 15th, and hopefully they can put on a better show.
No doubt. Looks like this upcoming UFC on Fox 5 event is going to feature a number 1 contendership featuring Jackson's own John Dodson facing Josier Formiga for a flyweight title shot. So it seems like the winner of this fight could get a title shot at Demetrius Johnson. That was according to a tweet and also through a story from MMAJunkie.com. But I was watching the weigh-ins today, and it seemed like if Dodson won, that he would get the title shot. They weren't really mentioning Formiga, if he got the victory, if he would be in the flyweight title picture. So you know how it is with title shots in the UFC. It's kind of iffy. So hopefully, the winner does, in fact, get the title shot, but we'll see what happens.
And for those of you who are wondering the results of the UFC 152, despite the cancellation of UFC 151, it had decent sales, about 450,000 buys.
And what do you think about that, Will, when it compares to, I guess, boxing? Because that's a pretty good boxing event that doesn't have Floyd Mayweather or Manny Pacquiao, right?
Yeah, it just speaks to the versatility of the fan base for UFC. So we don't necessarily have to have everything going according to plan in terms of superstars to really pull out really good numbers. So it's pretty impressive.
Well, I have to say, I mean, it was 2 title fights on that card, and John Jones is their biggest star. And their last fight drew about 700,000 buys. I mean, granted, it was with Rashad Evans, a hated rival and a lot of trash talk. But since UFC 151 was canceled, you would think there would be a lot more anticipation for this card in Toronto, but it seemed like the number was low. I don't know. I think it's kind of a disappointment, but it seems like everybody else seems to share your sentiment. So it seems like I'm just being super negative.
Cynical, man.
And in other news here, was sticking with the UFC. Forrest Griffin had revealed that he actually failed a drug test following UFC 101 way back. How long ago was that, Jay? Maybe 3-4 years ago?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah, he revealed Ariel Helwani in the MMA Hour that he actually failed the post-fight drug test after his bout with Anderson Silva, after that fadeaway jumper that he dropped in his face, that fist that he dropped there, tested positive for an anxiety drug. The PA State Athletic Commission never announced the results to the public. And then Griffin was free to fight Tito Ortiz a few months later. What do you guys think about that?
I'll take it. It's very bizarre. I don't know why the results were never announced. I guess that's a bizarre commission thing. Commissions have different rules in different states, so I guess this is one of those bizarre commission rules. And I think at the time, I think UFC still was trying to push Griffin as a major UFC star, so it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. So I just think, it's, what is it? You said, Jorge, 3 or 4 years later. I don't think this matters too much, especially because it was an anti-anxiety drug. I think if you took, any kind of performance-enhancing drug or testosterone, it'd be a much bigger deal. But anti-anxiety, I don't really see the big deal in that, to be honest.
I don't know. It's kind of weird, though, if you ask me.
Sure. It's strange. I mean, he looked like he had a lot of anxiety in that fight. I mean, he ran out of the cage, if you remember that, so... Also, there's news about the year-end UFC 155 event card. It's going down with Cain Velasquez versus Junior Dos Santos. It's going to be the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. So it looks like, as usual, the MGM gets the big-time UFC event at the end of the year. So that takes place in December on the 29th. That is going to be a terrible month for pretty much everybody who follows combat sports because it seems like there's an event on every day of December. This is going to be, I know, this brutal. I'm really glad that Tapia event's not in December. I don't know what we would do, man. So let's get into 3 rounds. I guess I want to just put it up to anyone. What do you guys want to go first? What's making you angry, or what's really got your attention this week in the combat sports world?
I think for me would be, I mean, I know we're going to talk about this here in a little bit, but just what the news that came down, yesterday with Puerto Rican boxer Orlando Cruz, that he admitted he was gay. I think this is something I hope we see more and more. That way the public just becomes more acceptable of this. And, I mean, that's the only 2 cents that I'm going to share right now because I know we're going to go into it a little bit more. But it's just something that I hope continues to develop and, I mean, not have these people just live in this, in this obscurity to where we force them to restrain themselves. And I know we kind of, I guess, I mean, it's good that we all have that type of mentality. When I say all of us, it's the 3 of us here. So definitely something that weighed heavily on my mind when that was announced yesterday.
Well, for me, I mean, I can't be too bugged for it. I mean, with, Adrian Broner was announced he's going to definitely be fighting Antonio DeMarco. So I was like, yes, this is what we want to see. But just, we always know that, the race is a huge factor in the combat sports. We talked about this before with Austin Trout and his representation in New Mexico. But, Broner is stating, it's hard for African-American fighters to get the credit, which I do believe we have a lot more obstacles to overcome at times. However, he's beginning in his career, and it just seems like this guy is really just trying to piggyback off of everything from Floyd Mayweather, from his, in-ring personality to his outside ring personality. So I hope this guy can get a little authentic. And, I want to look more of his interview to see where his point, how his point is coming across. But it just seems like he is really emulating Floyd Mayweather's style. And it's just really, disappoints me because he has a lot of talent, but this guy's just got to find his own personality.
I just have this short thing. I think the past couple of weeks I've been kind of bashing Dana White, but I got to give him props this week. I saw a documentary. I don't know if you guys watched the 30 for 30 series on ESPN. They did a documentary called Broke, and it really discussed the issues with athletes losing all their money after they retired for various reasons, whether it be child support, spending too much money on the latest Hummer or Lamborghini, or just popping bottles in the club, or just buying jewelry, or just mismanaging their money. And one of the big things in that documentary was athletes, their salaries being printed in the media. So I think there was a famous writer that started doing that, and ever since then, you see in the paper or online, Tom Brady, signs a $40 million contract. And it goes back to what Dana White said about fighters, about them not releasing fighter salaries to the general public. I mean, we know, Anderson Silva makes $500,000 during the fight, but we don't know the bonuses, the pay-per-view percentages. We don't know any kind of the back end after the fighter fights. So I understand what Dana's talking about, where the fighters have freedom to not have all these clingers just totally drain the resources out of these fighters who fight for the UFC. So I'm kind of on Dana White's side on that now after seeing that documentary.
Wow, Jay, you giving him props.
I am, yeah.
that might be the first in a long time. You know what? That may be the first prop that you've given him since he took over the UFC. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, man, I've always supported Dana White. I just, I'm going to call him out if, I just disagree with some stuff. I think Dana White's fantastic, and I back him, say, around 80% of the time, but it's the 20% just makes me angry. So.
And Jay, do they have anything in that documentary, real quick, for like the most, really successful combat sports superstars? They come from impoverished neighborhoods, and they're a lot of times they've never had a lot of experience in terms of managing money, and especially to those large amounts. So you think that with paying them like that without setting up financial advisors, I don't know what that strategy, that game plan is. I think that has to have a lot to do with it, though. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. They talked about Evander Holyfield, how he had a mansion, and they said he bought another mansion, and they said he had one bowling alley, he had to have two bowling alleys. It's like, why do you need two bowling alleys for? Why? You don't use the one you have. Why do you need another bowling alley in your house?
You can use that bald head of his and
Oh.
Maybe, man.
I love Holyfield.
But that documentary just broke down, there's different financial advisors of how, there's some shady ones that get in contact with these athletes and they drain all their money. And I think it's worse for combat sports athletes because they don't have that avenue of being on a team sport. So, if you play for the Jets, you're going to have somebody teaching you how to manage your money. Or instead now, if you're a boxer or MMA fighter, no one's going to give you a money managing class at Jacksons MMA camp or at any of the boxing camps here. I mean, Freddie Roach is not going to teach you how to manage your money. He's a boxing trainer. So I think for combat sports athletes, it's a tougher road than just playing in a team sport.
Good point.
So, guys, let's shift to our main event topics, and let's talk about this Invicta FC card number 3. I've missed the last two because of various things. I made it a point to see this card. I'm very excited. This card is loaded with tons of great fighters, including Caitlin Young. Tara La Rosa is on here, Julia Budd, Carla Esparza. But this card has very much a personal or a local flavor to it for us because Michelle Waterson's on this card. She's 9-3. She's going to be fighting Lacey Schuckman at the 105-pound weight class. And Jorge, you had a chance to speak with her about 10 minutes in depth about fighting in Invicta and also adjusting to parenthood. She had her child, just adjusting to married life and being a fighter at the same time.
Yeah, man, it was pretty interesting just to listen to someone with that demeanor. There's a difference when you speak to somebody who is married and who has a family as opposed to a young, hungry fighter, maybe in his mid-20s, whatever it may be. But Michelle, Michelle Waterson's just at a comfortable spot in her life, and you could just hear it in her confidence and just the comfort that she actually has because of the fact that she's established there. And what she did mention is that this camp was a little not necessarily easier, but it was a little more tolerable than it was when she came back from her pregnancy. So she gained a lot more muscle for this fight, and she apparently knows her opponent very well. I guess they used to roll together in Colorado. Michell is originally from Colorado Springs, so when they were younger and first starting out, they actually did roll together. And Schuckman is actually coming down in weight. She originally started fighting at 125 pounds, so receding that way and going back in weight, sometimes it takes away from your powers. But Michell is definitely not underestimating her. And as you mentioned, I did have the opportunity to speak to her, and it was a pleasant and it was a good conversation. What we also discussed was the promo video. Have you seen it yet, Jay? The promo video with Browne's in it, as is Travis Browne, Kyle Noak, and John Jones. They play ring girls in this video that she's actually doing.
I have not. I need to see it. I heard in the interview.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, man. So we discuss all of that in our interview.
So here's the audio of Jorge's interview with Michelle Waterson. It's about a short clip, 3 minutes long. You can hear the rest at youtube.com/LowBlow505. So here's the Michelle Waterson interview.
Jorge Hernandez with the Low Blow and Southwest Fight News here with a special interview a week out before a fight with Michelle, the Karate Hottie Waterson. How you doing, Michelle?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So coming up at the end of this week, you have a fight against Lacey Schuckman on Invicta FC 3 in Kansas City, Kansas. How's training gone along so far?
It's great. Been putting on a lot of muscle this camp, working a lot of wrestling and a lot of stand-up. So I'm excited to get in there and try some new stuff.
Now, how was this training camp a little different? Just because the last time you were actually coming off of the birth that you gave to your daughters. So how different was this training camp compared to the other one? What did you work on specifically?
Well, I think the biggest difference is my daughter's a little older, so it's a little harder to get away from the house and get away from her to train. So when I did get time to train, I made sure that I pushed it as hard as I could because it was only a limited amount of time. We also, Lacey's coming down from, I know she used to fight at 125. Her last fight was at 115. And so I think this is her first time at 105. And so we just try to put on some muscle because, and I worked with all the girls, Holly Holm and Julie Kitsy and Heather Clark, and all these girls are bigger than me, and so we're just trying to get me used to handling the bigger weight.
Yeah, talk about that gym, just because the three women you named are very popular in what they actually do. Of course, Julie Kitsy coming off of what I think so far, male or female, is the fight of the year performance. How is it like to have that backup with females in the Jacksons MMA gym?
It gives you a load of confidence, because I can train with them every day, and they push me and I push them as hard as they push me. So I have that confidence going into this fight that I have training partners that are going to push me to my limit and past my edge and allow me to perform my best. So it really is a confidence booster. And yeah, that fight with Julie Kitsy and Misha Tate, I definitely think deserves the fight of the year. It was awesome. It was great to see Julie actually come out and be able to show the world what we see every day in the gym.
Yeah. Now, your last fight was actually against Diana Rael at Jacksons MMA Series 7 here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Again, that was back in January. So it's been a good 9 months, almost 9 months since you last been in the cage. Besides taking the time off for the time you had your daughter, is this the longest inactivity you had in your career?
I don't know. I really haven't been thinking about it as an activity because I'm staying active. And in between that, I got married. So that was kind of, a big change for me. And so after I fought Elena Reed, I broken my hand, and I think I was out for about 6 to 7 months. I don't remember. But, I'm still training in the gym, and so I don't consider it like I don't think I'm going to have any ring rust or anything like that.
you said, Jorge. Like you said, Jorge, she goes into this more detail, just about making that transition, making that kind of balance between home life and her fight career. But with this Invicta card, I think there's a lot of potential for Invicta to be a major player in MMA. I know I said that before when Invicta FC 2 was around, but with this card, I think you see a lot of just the premier talent of women's MMA, and I'm really pumped up to see it. Is there any kind of fight on here you're looking forward to, Jorge?
The main event, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And
for the
also,
title.
Yes, I definitely think so. Just because of the talent that both women have and their ability to finish the fights, it's going to be incredible. Who knows? Maybe within by the middle or end of next year, Michell Waterson will be fighting for that 105 pound belt. So that's why I'm very interested in that. What amazes me about Invicta is just the matchmaking. It's perfect. You're not going to see someone with a record or experience that overwhelms the other. It's going to be pretty competitive. Despite the fact, even if a fight might end in the first or second round, they've done their scouting and they've organized it in the way to where they can gain a positive reputation, I think.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Also, Taylor Rosa's on this card. She's kind of, I don't know how to describe her. I mean, people say she's one of the best women's MMA fighters in the world, but yet she's so rare to see live in action. So, to my recollection, this is going to be like the first time that I think the majority of MMA fans are able to see Taylor Rosa on a national platform. Even though it's not on TV, it's on the internet. It's free, and I think from the hype is beginning from my MMA experts, she's definitely a fighter to watch. So no doubt this card is going to be pretty entertaining to take hold. So the day before, it's going to be UFC on FX. It's a really entertaining card. It's live from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Features Travis Browne versus Antonio Bigfoot Silva, Jake Ellenberger versus Jay Haran, John Dotson's taking on Josier Fominga, and Josh Neer faces Justin Edwards. A really entertaining UFC on FX card. Take a look at the main event. Me and you, Jorge, talked about Travis Browne's size, and just for his frame, he's really agile. And to me, in this fight, I just think Bigfoot Silva, I just don't know what he has to offer against Travis Browne, other than the jiu-jitsu game. If this fight stays standing, I just don't see Silva surviving too long. Am I wrong about that? What do you think?
That's true. And also, if it goes to the ground, what actually, I guess, you can take from Travis Browne is that his last fight against Chad Griggs, he actually won via submission and an arm triangle choke, but he only has 2 submissions. Obviously, a guy as big as him, it might be a little difficult to incorporate some of that jiu-jitsu, but if he keeps it standing, which I think he will, I mean, the guy's 13-0 with 9 knockouts. I think he can definitely knock Bigfoot out, and I think Travis Browne is one of the guys that can give Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos, problems just because of his size. The guy is 6'7". I mean, that's enormous. And you talk about Bigfoot, he's 6'4", and this guy is a lot bigger than him. But as you can see, Silva's frame was just a little bit wider than his. So I mean that always doesn't translate into power. But his last 2 fights against Cormier and Cain Velasquez, he lost by KO or TKO. I see Travis winning this in the late first, or maybe even mid first, late first round with a knockout, man.
Really? Wow.
I think so.
I guess we're doing predictions.
I guess
Browne.
we are.
I'll take Browne second round. I think Silva is still a formidable opponent. He has pretty good striking, so I think he'll hang in there for a round or 2. But I just think with the power, Cain Velasquez just destroyed him on the feet. And I just think Travis Browne has that same ability to just overwhelm Bigfoot.
And
but
Jay, I wanted to ask you right away, Travis Browne, this is going to be what I believe a 6th fight with the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
What are the chances that he gets a title fight beginning of sometime next year, maybe late spring or something, man? Because he doesn't even feel like it. Like he deserves all the accolades and all of this, because he feels like he doesn't made a name for themselves. I read an article that Tristan Critchfield, a writer out of Albuquerque, actually did on him, and Travis Browne did say, if I were cut today, no one would even notice. So he's pretty humble in that aspect.
It's valid. That's true. I think, we talk about it all the time, guys, about in prize fighting, you are the commodity. You're not just playing on a team. I mean, you're a product yourself, and you have to sell yourself. So I think what Travis Browne, I don't want to say needs to learn, but I guess he'll grow into, is trying to find his own persona in order to sell himself to casual MMA fans. Because, as you know, the heavyweights draw a lot of, casual viewers that, the flyweights or the bantamweights or the lightweights don't bring. A lot of people like seeing the heavyweights go, and certainly with Travis Browne's fighting style, he's very entertaining, has the KOs to prove it. He is a commodity in the heavyweight division. But there are some moving parts in there that you have to keep in mind. I think one thing is this December, you got to take a look at the title fight with Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos. We have to see, you know how title fights are, man. If there's a draw or something funny happens, you got to do a rematch, and that pushes everything back. Also, you have to take a look at Daniel Cormier. He's supposed to fight Frank Mir. Frank Mir gets hurt. There's rumors of Pat Barry fighting Daniel Cormier, even though it hasn't been confirmed yet. But let's say Cormier wins. He crosses over to the UFC. Does Cormier get the title shot? Or does he go down to 205 and Cain Velasquez wins? So I think with Travis Browne, you have to see, if Shane Carwin is impressive over Roy Nelson, does Shane Carwin get the title shot? There's just a lot of guys somewhat in play as a contender. Also, Stefan Struve's on a hot streak. So there's a lot of, interesting contenders in that heavyweight division. I like Travis Browne. I just think he needs that kind of co-main event fight on a pay-per-view to get that mainstream attention, to get the fans behind him to warrant a title shot. But I think now, fighting on FX, fighting on Fuel, I don't think it's going to get that fan support behind him to warrant a title shot. You know how Dana White is. He puts the fights on what people want to see. So, take a look at Roy Nelson. His record's not that good. Yeah, he's on The Ultimate Fighter, and he's going to fight Shane Carwin. So I just think, with Browne, he just needs to be on the main cards on a pay-per-view a little bit more. So I want to talk about the co-main event, Jake Ellenberger versus Jay Haran. This is a very interesting fight. Ellenberger, despite losing to Martin Kamen, has been really exceptional on the UFC. That's really been consistent. Other than his loss to really Carlos Condit, has won every fight before heading into his bout with Martin Kamen. He's facing Jay Haran. He is a late replacement. But now, pretty much, they're supposed to fight in the UFC 151 card, but, that got canceled, so it got moved to this fight here. What do you see Jay Haran's chances in this fight? Do you see him putting up any kind of a battle against Jake Ellenberger?
I think he has a chance, just depending on what he decides to do. If he actually, if he keeps it standing, I know he's a Division I wrestler. So this guy does have the ability to actually take it down at the ground, but I think Ellenberger is just, I think he's a little bit bigger than he is, so I think the size advantage is definitely going to favor Jake. So I don't see Jake. I think Jake Ellenberger by decision.
Yeah, I agree. Jay Haran has a knack for just grinding fighters out and just kind of sucking the will out of them. But I think Ellenberger, I think he's too tough for that, and I think Ellenberger's going to get the win here. But I like Jay Haran. I kind of, I like, his fighting style is not the most exciting, but I think I kind of respect his veteran status in the sport. I just think with Jake Ellenberger, he's kind of a little bit in over his head, but we'll see. He's a veteran. He's been around the game for a long time, so we'll see what happens. Also on the card features, as we talked about earlier, John Dawson taking on Josier Formenga. Dana White has stated that this fight's a possible number one contendership for the flyweight championship. But as I said earlier today on the weigh-in show, it seemed like only John Dodson was in line for that title shot. So John Dodson has a very flamboyant personality, exciting. He is very flashy at the weigh-ins, entertaining guy. We've interviewed him, Jorge. Does Dodson, can he separate his, persona outside the cage and not kind of have it ruin what he has going on inside the cage? Can people take him seriously enough so people think he's a contender in the flyweight division?
if he wins fights by exciting style, I mean, I think people would forget all about that, because as far as his personality, you know, when he's being interviewed or whatever, I know maybe when he was on Tough, people may have been turned off by it. But when it comes to his personality just in the cage, he's just happy. I mean, he's happy about life. He's joyful. Even when you see him out in the streets, or you see him there at grappling events, this guy's just trying to have a ball. He's out there breakdancing on the wrestling mats. And I think people, as long as he wins in a convincing or entertaining style, then people will be willing to actually put all that stuff aside. Out of his 13 wins, I mean, he's finished 7 of them. I mean, so he's 50% when it comes to that, and you know, all his other victories are by decision. So he's had a couple of knockouts here with the UFC, but it's kind of, you know, just when it comes to him challenging for the title already, I mean, I like it. You're going to see 2 athletic guys in him and Johnson if they ever do get it on. But first, he's got to get past De Silva, who, you know, a lot of people don't know who he is just because he hasn't really fought in America too much.
No doubt. Also on the preliminary card features Ease Edwards taking on Jeremy Stevens, and Shane Roller taking on Jason Volkman. Volkman's been very controversial about his political stances, but the guy wins, and nevertheless, he's taking on a difficult opponent, Shane Roller. There's some news about Dennis Hallman and Thiago Tavares. That fight's been canceled due to Hallman showing up overweight. Tavares pretty much said, if you're 3 pounds overweight, the fight will happen. Hallman weighed in 7 pounds overweight.
Oh, my God.
The fight did not happen. Tavares refused to fight, so the fight was canceled. And now it seemed like Hallman has been let go by the UFC. That news just broke, I think, within a couple of hours ago. Let me just double check. Yep, Dennis Hallman released from the UFC, so he's gone. So, you know, if people mostly remember him from his, you know, unique trunks, I'll leave it at that. I think a couple of UFCs ago. So, you know, now he misses weight. And so looks like now he's fired. So that's kind of too bad, because I want to see Thiago Tavares fight. He's a very exciting fighter, so hopefully he gets put on a card immediately. I know Dana White gave him his show money, so he gets paid, but nevertheless, I'm sure he wanted to get in there and earn it. So, guys, let's shift to boxing and a controversial subject. We kind of talked about this sparingly a little bit this year, about just, you know, combat sports athletes, their sexuality. And I think this story got released, a couple of days ago, Will? Was that right? About Orlando Cruz admitting he was gay? When did that first break? Was that a couple of days ago?
I actually just saw it today. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But
I saw something a couple of days ago, but I wasn't sure. But yes, nevertheless, Orlando Cruz did admit he's gay. You've seen him fight, Will, and I think you've heard about him, Jorge.
Uh-huh.
You guys, you know the boxing culture more than I do. So I want to ask you, you know, in MMA, you know, I think it was Minotauro Nogueira talked about you never wanted to roll with somebody who was gay. You thought it was just totally blasphemous and didn't want anything to do with it. Right. But with boxing, do boxers share that same sentiment? If, you know, let's say Floyd Mayweather sparring with somebody and later on he realizes the guy he was sparring with, he was gay, would that anger Floyd Mayweather at all? Or would he care? I mean, does boxing share that same sentiment? What do you guys think?
I mean, it definitely has the sentiments of, you know, a lot of, you know, in society, just like in every other arena, it's just a lot of forms of masculinity often being misconstrued. And I think it has a lot of stigmas attached to that when you know, anybody comes out of the closet or is not perceived what is normal, whatever. So there's a lot of stereotypes to wrestle against. And like I said, boxing is, you know, it's always been this, you know, machismo thing. A lot of fighters, not a lot. He's the first one ever to openly come out. One of the fighters that came to mind when I heard about this story was Emil Griffin, who later admitted that he was gay, but he had always wrestled with it during his fight career. And he specifically said, as a fighter, he never felt comfortable that he could just be open about his sexual orientation. And one of the memorable fights that he's also known for is, you know, his fight with Benny Paret, which unfortunately he killed in the ring. And I think he was just so angered in terms of what Perret did with him was to make a very discriminatory remark regarding his sexual orientation. So it's just really interesting in terms of how other fighters will react to this, and they might have a fantastic sparring match, but like I said, he's gonna be constantly dealing with a lot of stigmas. Like a lot of guys, of course, will be really immature about it and feel that it's more of a personal defeat if they get beat by a gay boxer. So but as the boxing world, a lot of boxers, a lot of the media is just really applauding him for coming out. But it's going to be interesting to see how his career is going to proceed from this point, because the only other fighter that really has been notable that he's fought is Daniel Ponce de Leon, which he lost to. So it's just really going to be interesting where his career is honestly going to go from here.
And when you talk about, how accepting the boxing culture is, let's not forget that a lot of the boxing culture is, a minority culture, specifically, the Latin community, where, unfortunately it's very difficult for a young man or a man to come out and admit his sexuality because of what Will mentioned, is the machismo that exists within the culture. And the Puerto Rican and, Mexican cultures are pretty similar when it comes to sexual orientation. They're very conservative cultures for the most part. And, it must have been very difficult for him to actually come out. But, he came out, very proud of his sexuality. First thing he said, I'm proud to be Puerto Rican. I'm proud to be Puerto Rican. And then he followed up, but I'm also, a proud gay man. It's not like one and the same. They both go in hand. By all means, this guy's just proud of who he is in general, no matter if he's Puerto Rican, no matter if he's male, no matter if he's gay or straight. So very interesting. And, that Emil Griffith story you brought up, Will, it's very interesting just because of the fight that you mentioned between him and Benny Perret there back in 1962. It's, during the weigh-ins, Perret did say, that he did call him that F word, and it enraged him. And, ultimately in the ring, it got crazy, and and he killed him. It was, he didn't mean to. The ref just didn't stop the fight, but it was just a different time back then. I think, or I'd hope that our culture is more accepting. It definitely is more of just people in general than it was back in those days. Hopefully we see this more and more where people are comfortable just to come out.
It also reminded me, it's kind of similar to soldiers of combat sports. It's just like this unspoken rule of kind of like the military used to be, don't ask, don't tell. So it's, that's something that I definitely thought about as well. But, bottom line, there's going to be a lot for him to deal with in him coming out. So I think that, as a country, we've matured in some ways, but not to the extent where this is not going to be problematic for his career. I think that Jay, you pose a very good point. In terms of if other fighters are going to avoid him, and I think that's definitely highly possible. So again, it's just going to be really interested in how his team is going to continue to champion for him by his decision to come out, and then if he's still going to get those great matchups. And just if people will really look to history, the great gladiators, this is nothing new, but yet people still seem to be tremendously shocked by it. So I don't know if things have changed that much.
So I want to ask you guys real quickly before we move on. Orlando Cruz, I don't think he's a contender for a major title anytime soon. Am I kind of close on that by any chance?
Yeah, no, you're right.
We're not going to see him on HBO or Showtime pay-per-view anytime soon, right?
No, not on pay-per-view.
So,
maybe some of those smaller Showtime shows, but no title shot within the next year and a half, I don't think.
So it's one thing, I don't think he has any kind of promotional backing behind him, so I think he has kind of the freedom to come out with his sexuality, but it's different with, if you have Showtime, if you do have Showtime or HBO, and you have, Golden Boy, or if you're aligned with Top Rank, how would that work? Do you see a boxer aligned with any of those camps, a fighter coming out, being, affiliated with Golden Boy or Top Rank, even if they're not, a top pay-per-view level fighter. Let's say they're a rising star in one of those two organizations. Do you see a fighter coming out then? Are the circumstances different since Orlando Cruz is not directly affiliated with a major promotional company?
That's a really good question. I mean, and I'm not saying this to be sarcastic in any way. I just, look at, you mentioned Golden Boy. Look at Oscar De La Hoya. I mean, he had to admit that, it's totally different from terms of cross-dressing and being gay. But in terms of his admittance to that, maybe he would be more sensitive to that concept in terms of being outside of the normal realm, what society can considers norm. So maybe Golden Boy would be the exception, but that's a really good question. I think that it would be entirely more problematic for other huge name fighters to do this. I mean, you made another great point, Jay. It's just it is questionable in terms of the direction of his career, because like I said, he's not really a really well-known fighter. So I mean, in terms of where he's at in his career, I don't know the measurement of his loss in terms of coming out in this admittance, or but yeah, if it's a bigger name fighter, I think it would be tremendously more difficult and probably a lot more shocking to the world of boxing as well.
I completely agree with that. It'd be very difficult, and we've seen this before in other sports where lesser-known guys come out, but it's not a superstar. We've yet to see someone, on the level of like a LeBron James, a Floyd Mayweather, a Tiger Woods, someone on that level come out and say that they are gay. So it's going to be very difficult until that time. And as like you mentioned, it's like guys at that level, at the the higher tier, if you will, they have a lot more riding, unfortunately, by announcing something like this. I mean, if you're out there making, let's say, $700,000 a year, sponsored by Chick-fil-A, no way you're going to come out and say you're gay, man.
Yes, exactly.
No doubt. Let's shift to our last topic, and that is Arturo Gatti. There's no doubt that I think all three of us share a more than a healthy respect for Gatti. I think he's on one of my lists as one of my favorite boxers of all time, just watching him. It seems like there's some Hall of Fame discussion and some writers that are claiming that he's not worthy of being a Hall of Famer. So how compare becoming a Hall of Famer in boxing to becoming a Hall of Famer in team sports? And if you guys would just enlighten me on kind of the rules of being in the Boxing Hall of Fame. I know in certain sports you have to wait 5 years before you get in. And I know in basketball you can still coach and be a Hall of Famer. There's different rules for different sports. With boxing, is there a waiting period? Is there a certain criteria of wins, knockouts? What is the basic kind of platform for a fighter to become a Hall of Famer?
It is 5 years. It's a 5-year waiting period, and it's up to the writers to decide. Ultimately, it's a series of ballots that they have to go through to finally be put on that final list. So when it comes to wins and losses, there really isn't any, just because guys like Harold Letterman, who basically contributed to the sport, Dick Vitale in basketball, if you will, was never the best basketball player in the world or even a good coach. But what he contributed as a commentator, actually helped out. So it's basically based off of your contributions to the sport and how well you did. And I know Will wants to talk about his Arturo Gatti's Hall of Fame credentials.
Yeah, and you knew it was coming. It's like telepathic, man. It's just hard. I mean, to me, of course, Arturo Gatti. I mean, Sylvester Stallone got inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame for Rocky, and there's nobody that reminds me more of Rocky than Arturo Gatti. So yeah, in terms of this is a good. I think this is a good situation to speak to boxing in terms of, as you mentioned, Jorge, it's always not about the record, but a lot of times it is about knockout ratios, the formative opponents that they had in the ring. But Arturo Gatti, here's my case for Arturo Gatti. Yes, he did not win all of his big fights, but the thing that, I say this again and again, and I can't reiterate it enough, is the fighter's ability to take the risk. And it's showing the measurement of Arturo Gatti's heart in terms of always being able to take the risk. I don't think I've ever been as impressed by a fighter who has been repeatedly knocked down, cut, bruised, a broken hand, and this guy was always willing to get in there and fight and still go for the win. There's so many other fighters that easily get discouraged, great fighters that get discouraged as soon as they start losing a fight. They have no backup plan. It really exposes, that their skills far exceed their heart. And, Arturo Gatti, he had really great skills. I mean, they're not on the, a Hall of Famer like as easily as, some of the greats like Muhammad Ali or, Roy Jones. Whenever he stops deciding to fight, he's going to get in there hopefully. But, but he's definitely always been willing to take the big fights. He's never given up on the ring. So I think that he definitely deserves it. And I really hope that they're not trying to get a cop-out in terms of, people feeling, extreme empathy for the way that Arturo Gatti's life ended. I mean, I definitely feel as one of his fans that I still don't have closure in the way that his life ended. But regardless if even Arturo Gatti was still alive today, I would have the same position in terms of being for him getting admitted into the Hall of Fame, because I think he definitely deserves it. He's one of the Fight Fans' greatest action heroes. And, I mean, it's just, of course, it comes to mind with his battles against Ward. And it was always interesting against the battle against Ward. Look at the way that these guys were willing to fight. And there wasn't even a belt on the line. These guys were just in there, exchanging it, blow for blow, in the ring, all-out risk. And they've created a memorable trilogy that will always go down in boxing history. And Arturo Gatti was a part of that. And, I can go on, but those are my main reasons why I feel Arturo Gatti is definitely worthy of being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
And just very quickly, just a quick breakdown, just to go through some of his credentials. He became the IBF Super Featherweight champion back in '97. He defended that, I believe, twice. Then later on in 2004, this was 7 years afterward, he became WBC light welterweight champion, defended that 3 times before losing it to Floyd Mayweather in 2005. So, he did have certain spans of where, he showed his greatness on 2 separate occasions, despite the fact that it was gaps between time. And this is, to me, the most compelling one. 4 times his fights were voted as Ring Magazine's Fight of the Year.
Yep.
His fight against Gabriel Ruelas, his fight against Ivan Robinson, and that's consecutive years in '97, '98. His first fight against Mickey Ward in 2002, and then again his fight with Mickey Ward in 2003, and that was their 3rd fight. It was incredible, just to see him fight. This guy was just, a brawler, and he could box at the same time. Despite the fact that you would hurt him, he'd show that he was hurt for maybe 5-6 seconds, and then muster through it for the rest of the fight. It was just incredible to actually see this guy in action. And out of the top 5 fights I think that have happened, I guess in the last, let's say 15 years, Ward and Gatti have 2 of those, I think, out of the top 5 that have happened. So it's just, it's good to see that the Hall of Fame will hopefully eventually pay tribute to this guy and give him the respect he deserves as a talented boxer.
Is Mickey Ward a Hall of Famer if Arturo Gatti's a Hall of Famer?
Wow, that's...
Ooh, why you always got to make it difficult, man?
Right.
No, that's a very good question. I mean, he's definitely been in some memorable fights. I think that Mickey Ward, his notoriety really didn't come along until he fought Arturo Gatti. I mean, Mickey Ward, before Arturo Gatti, I mean, he definitely, he's been a champion before, great fighter, but, he was almost, perceived throughout not the entire duration, but periods of his boxing career as that journeyman. So if you could get past, you could go on to superstardom, and we saw like that happen with Zab Judah. So he's always been a really tough fighter, but, he really didn't establish that superstardom as early on as like Arturo Gatti. I mean, Arturo Gatti was, he's always been fighting like, well, he's been fighting big names for a long time. He hasn't necessarily been winning, but I think that his charisma far exceeds Mickey Ward. So Mickey Ward, I really like the guy, but I could see that being a lot more debatable versus Arturo Gatti being inducted into the Hall of Fame. For
Mickey Ward, I say no, just because of a couple of things. He never won a major title, and the only title shot he actually had, a major one, was when he fought Vince Phillips back in '97. Man, this was a while. This was a long time ago, and the fight was stopped due to a cut over the eye. I didn't think he was going to beat Vince Phillips. Vince Phillips was a pretty talented boxer back in his heyday, but with that record, 38-13. I mean, no world title. I mean, the only thing he has really is just that well, I shouldn't say that he really has. He was a very exciting boxer to see, but those 2 fights he had, it was a trilogy that he had, but 2 fights really stand out in history. And when you compare that to Gotti's 40-9 record, 2 world titles, and 4 Ring of the Year, Ring Magazine Fight of the Year awards, I don't think there's a question. Gatti was a better boxer and obviously had the more accolades than Mickey Ward. So unfortunately, I say no for Mickey Ward and a yes to Arturo Gatti.
But Mickey Ward, he did get the movie though.
He did get the movie.
Great movie.
He did get the
Awesome
movie. He did get the movie.
I think that's going to wrap up our show, guys. Anything else you guys wanted to add before we call it a night?
No, I had the pleasure of going to Phoenix last week. I interviewed several fighters. There's a very compelling story on a kid named Carlos Castro that's up on swfight.com, and it's up on our Facebook page. Our Facebook page also. And I got a video interview with that guy. Again, LowBlow 505 to check that out, and check out the that whole Michelle Waterson video as well.
No doubt. Anything you want to add, Will, before we say goodbye?
I'm good for tonight, my friend.
All right, cool. So you can get in touch with the show through Facebook, through LowBlow. Facebook.com/LowBlow podcast that has all of our latest shows and plus news stories we find cool or interesting. We're also on Twitter through @LowBlow, and you can also email the show through lowblow505@gmail.com. And we're also always available on Stitcher and iTunes. You can get into contact with Fight Fans Radio through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream. And it's all Fight Fans Radio, one name that has our show along with the rest of the Fight Fans Radio family. I think that's going to pretty much end our show. So for Jorge Hernandez and Will McClary, I'm Justin Goodrum, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.